Well, as most of us gamers know, 2023 has been an absolutely insane year for games. There's just been so many good games coming out every month, every week almost. It's overwhelming to be able to afford to play them, to be able to have the time to play them. So it's going to be one of those years that people are going to be, making up for lost time, next year, the year after, just to catch up on all the good games. But the amount of games that have come out this year that are in the conversation for Game of the Year is just it's insane that any of these games could be basically the best game that came out that year on any other year. But there's like 7, 8 of them, maybe even 10 of them. Like it's crazy. And a lot of them that I played this year, I could easily put, depending on the time of day and when you ask me, as my number one favorite game of the year. Like earlier this year, Jedi Survivor really surprised me at how much I love that game. I was expecting to like it, but I was not expecting to really, really, truly love it. As well, I was very, very excited for Spider-Man 2, probably my most anticipated game of the year, actually, and ended up being really great. Still not sure if I like it more than the first, but it's up there as a game of the year contender, absolutely. And one of the first games that came out this year, Dead Space, the Dead Space remake, loved that game as well. I was a big fan of the original, so when the remake was announced, I knew I was definitely going to be playing it. And in the indie scene as well, with games like Dredge, which is a great little weird fishing game with some horror elements that I was absolutely addicted to. Just a fun little exploration game with some cool puzzles and stuff, and just a lot of really cool, fun things to explore and uncover. And we also had the return of like classic RPGs like Sea of Stars, which is like a Chrono Trigger inspired kind of early Final Fantasy game, turn-based combat with a really cool world to explore, really, really great combat, fun characters, great animation and art design and music. And I had a great time with that game. I explored every inch of the world and tried to find everything I could, and just it's one of those games that kind of you may get buried under all the AAA releases that came out this year, but absolutely worth a shot. And one I'm not seeing mentioned as much that very, very much should be mentioned is Humanity, which is a very ingenious, psychedelic, really cool puzzle game that I really, really liked. I was kind of blown away by how much stuff they were able to put into this game, like different mechanics and gameplay and things that like really make you feel smart when you figure it out. And just the look of the game and the sound and the music was it's just something that really pulled you in, and I think it deserved more attention. I would say my personal game of the year for 2023 a few months ago was going to be Resident Evil 4 Remake, only because how much I was looking forward to that game, but as well as how much of an attachment I have to the original, which is still one of my favorite games of all time. And when I played it back in high school when it came out, I was, it pulled me in and kind of grabbed me like no other game had before. Just the perfect combination of horror and action gameplay and the story that just over the top and kept getting more and more ridiculous. You never knew which direction it was going to go in and what was going to happen next. It just really pulled the rug out from underneath you at any given moment and was just throwing everything at you. And the remake, of course, ended up being kind of elevating the original and changing it in different ways, making some moments different, but also keeping other moments the same, but also just looking amazing and gorgeous and playing extremely well with the current Resident Evil engine. There's a lot of game there to enjoy. Like, the campaign is quite long, and the game also wants you to go back and replay it again using different weapons and not dying and under different difficulties and stuff. So there's a lot there to take in. A lot of these games I have already talked about in a bit more extensively because I've gotten the platinums for several of them as well. I'll link the videos to them down below if you want to check them out, but I kind of give my thoughts on the games as a whole, but also like my journey getting the platinums for both of them, for a lot of them. The only one that I didn't get the platinum for that I mentioned here, Sea of Stars, I did not get the platinum for that one, and I did not get the platinum for Resident Evil 4 Remake, just because Resident Evil 4 Remake asks you to play it over and over again several times, and there was so much other games I wanted to play at the moment that I just ended up moving on to something else. But ultimately, what I'm getting to here is Alan Wake 2, which came out as of the time of recording this video just a few weeks ago at the end of October. I was really excited for Alan Wake 2. I played Alan Wake Remastered earlier this year just to kind of return to that game because I did play it originally on Xbox 360. Really enjoyed it. Just a great little fun game. Have my fair share of problems with it in terms of some things that frustrated me and whatever, but I just can't not love that game just because of how weird and unique it is, and you play as a writer and in an action game, and it's kooky and bizarre. It's just it's totally up my alley. I also played for the first time this year ever Max Payne, the original Max Payne for PlayStation 2. I played it on PlayStation 5. As someone who has only played Max Payne 3, Max Payne 1, playing it just kind of, it's a game of its time. It's janky, it's clumsy. Some of the sections feel a little off control-wise, but at the same time, it's just an amazing game that, of course, you can see why it was so influential, and like the slow-mo bullet time effect, like just at the time that the game came out, that was just everywhere in the movies because of the Matrix, but so many other games were influenced by that came out after Max Payne, and you can just see what such a landmark game it was, and just reminded me how good of a studio Remedy have been since so long ago. And then, of course, Control coming out a few years ago, just accelerating their unique take on action games while remaining like a really weird, bizarre game that they love to just... They're so good at doing these like weird storylines and storytelling and really challenging narratives while also having some great action gameplay in there. So when Alan Wake 2 was announced, I was like, okay, I'm ready for more Remedy weirdness. Control was great. Alan Wake Original was great. I'm excited for Alan Wake 2. And that's my long-winded way of saying Alan Wake 2 is my personal Game of the Year for 2023. And I'm very proud and happy to confirm that I got the Platinum Trophy for it. This is a game that I didn't really look at the Platinum or the trophy requirements. I didn't really check it beforehand because I knew there would be maybe some spoilers in there, and I just kind of wanted to go in the game and just enjoy it blindly, not know anything beforehand. But this is a very, very gracious game that is happy to give you trophies for a lot of different things. I'm going to try to avoid some story spoilers in here. I won't give any story spoilers away, and I won't show any trophies that have any spoilers in them. But Alan Wake 2 is one of those games where they'll happily give you trophies for really doing not much of anything. Just like there's some that are in here like use a hand flare. You're going to use hand flares all the time. Dodge at the last minute. You dodge a lot of enemy attacks. Pick up manuscript pages. They're everywhere in the game. Ignite a hand flare. Discover a stash in a lunchbox. Find a screwdriver. Find bolt cutters. These are all things that you will do in the game without you won't miss any of these things. They're just part of playing the game. So Alan Wake 2 is happy to just hand out trophies. There's 67 trophies, as you can see at the top there, and 65 bronze and only 1 gold. Or 1 silver, no gold. So there's only 1 platinum. The 1 silver is for just beating the game. So every other trophy is a bronze. But the game just hands out trophies for everything. So like there's times where you're going to be getting trophy after trophy after trophy for just doing what the game asks you to do. Play through it, enjoy its story, collect things, grab a weapon, find a map. Like they're just, they're very grateful with the trophies. There are things that you may not be specifically going for, like fully upgrade a single weapon. Since the upgrades aren't super plentiful, some of them are a little scarce if you aren't looking for them. So you may be like upgrading this one here and this one here and not just going for a single one. So this one may be missable, but if you're finding enough upgrades, then you're probably going to end up upgrading one of them all the way anyways. But the only really difficult or missable thing here are there are some collectibles that you need to find around the world, and there's some puzzles that you need to do. These are mainly side quest related and not part of the main storyline, but a lot of the side quests and things are all part of the single narrative that is part of the game that you really do want to go out of your way to find, because it just enriches the plot, adds more to the mystery, and solves things that you're wondering about previously in the game. And just as part of the whole detective part of the game, because a lot of this game revolves around finding evidence and clues and adding them to this wall that basically explains case by case everything that's going on in the game. So it gives all the context that you're missing to a lot of different things. But you're going to be getting trophies for every time you beat a chapter, every time you beat a boss, every time you're advancing the plot. Tons of trophies for that. But if you're checking out all the environments, making sure you're looking around at things, you're not going to miss out on finding a lot of this stuff. Finding all the weapons, I think it may be missable because some of the weapons you do have to solve little puzzles to find, but they're pretty much easy. They're not off the beaten path. A lot of them are right there for you to see. And then there's like a random miscellaneous one, like combat one, like defeating an enemy with a single shot from a crossbow. You're probably going to get that naturally, especially if you go for headshots. The nursery rhyme puzzles, those are probably the most puzzle-centric other than ones you need to do throughout the main plot. These are these side quest ones that are little puzzles that I had a lot of fun with them. I thought they were really great to find and try to figure out. Some of them are a little tricky. And the cult stashes and lunchboxes, some of these cult stashes have puzzles involved in them, and some of them are quite tricky. Some of them actually required real life math to solve. So good luck with some of those if you're not good at math. Otherwise, you can probably just look up how to do it online. But there actually are some puzzles involved in here. Some of them are really cool, smart, and ingenious. So definitely try to find all these, because, you know, getting the trophy is just part of it, but they also have great little items and resources in them as well. There are these things as well called charms that you can find that are kind of like combat modifiers that can help you in combat or help you with resources or finding things on the map, just little things like that. And when I mention map as well, this game is slightly open world, as in some sections where you can wander around. It's still mostly a linear game, but there are little open areas that you can explore. So you know, it just adds to the exploration where you can, and the way that these environments are so detailed and just full of things. This game is it looks so good that sometimes you're not even sure what you can interact with. Like, you'll be walking around environments and you really need to look to make sure you're not missing items on the ground or things to interact with, because they're so dense and detailed, and just there's things everywhere in every region of the world you go in, and every map, like in interiors and exteriors, there's things to look at and see. So like, the environmental designers for this game, just they did an insane amount of work to make this world feel so real and lived in. This one as well is maybe missable, Pet Mayor Setter. You just have to find all these little mayor kiosks around the map. They're not hard to find at all, and you're probably going to find most of them just by walking around, because they're very easy to see, and a lot of them are on like paths that you have to walk by anyways. So basically, a lot of these trophies, if you plan on seeing everything anyways, collecting everything, you're probably not going to miss out on a lot of these, because a lot of it's just natural. And I ended up getting them platinum right when I beat the game. I got the trophy for completing the game, and then the platinum popped after that. So I didn't have to do another playthrough. I didn't have to do anything like that. So, and I didn't feel like I was on the verge of missing anything either, because there's several times where you can wander around and just do things on your own. The game isn't pushing you through to go to the next chapter or whatever. You have all these moments where you can wander around and do these things at your own leisure. Now, I haven't really gone into much about why this is my game of the year yet. I kind of just wanted to do a run through of the trophy process and how I ended up getting the platinum, and just kind of encourage people to go for it, because if you're going to play this game start to finish, and you're a trophy hunter, I mean, this is a great game to go for the platinum for, because I don't think you're going to run into any trouble whatsoever with it. But my God, Alan Wake 2 as a storytelling game, as a storytelling experiment in presentation and twists and turns and meta narratives and performances, music and action and horror, and just I could go on. I think I could go on for hours about this game. It's everything that I love about the art form of storytelling. Like, in terms of video games and movies and TV shows, like, there's so much to watch in this game as well. Like, you're playing the game with the control in your hands, but there's many times where you're just sitting there watching these in-game cutscenes or live action cutscenes with actors, and you're so wrapped up in what's going on that you're just like, I can't wait to see what happens next. Like, you're just pushing the story forward, because you're like, I'm so confused by what just happened. I need to see how they resolve this or how they explain this. But then the way the game works is there's two main characters, Alan Wake and Saga Anderson. You control both of them in different areas, depending on when you play it at different times. So you could be with Alan one moment and Saga the next, or you could play hours as Alan and then hours as Saga. You can control when you go between the two stories. And also, things are happening at different times in each storyline. So something that happens to Alan could affect Saga at a different time, or vice versa. So you're seeing things that Alan witnesses maybe hours later with Saga, or previous hours later. It's hard to explain, but when you play the game, you're going to notice things like that. But it boggles my mind how they actually were able to do that, to actually accurately do that in a way that didn't make the game feel confusing. And you will be confused at certain points, but that's part of the whole process. But how they were able to determine when players would play through the game, in what way and how. Like, as Alan one way and as Saga the next, but how everything still works its way out to make sense in the end. And just quickly, if you're a fan of Remedy games and you know who Sam Lake is, the director who was the likeness for Max Payne, he's in this game as a character named Alex Casey, who is a character that a character that Alan Wake created, but he's also, the character in the game is a real life character, an FBI agent, but he plays as well a character that Alan Wake created. He was like a hard-boiled detective, which very much looks like Max Payne because he's also voiced by James McCaffrey, who did Max Payne's voice. So there's moments in this game where you're interacting with Alex Casey in New York as Alan Wake, and he looks like Max Payne, and just the whole meta-ness of it, I just love it so much. I just love the whole Alan Wake, Max Payne pipeline Sam Lake thing, where like Sam Lake plays himself in the first Alan Wake game for a scene, but then he's also playing Alex Casey, and then Alex Casey is a reference to Max Payne, and I just smile so much when I think about it, and I just love it. This game does this thing too where you interact with these echoes that like they're like almost like flashbacks, and the game projects like the faces of people onto the screen, so it's almost like an astral projection of their face on the like in the environment, and you can kind of move around and look at them in different angles, and sometimes like a face will be projected on the wall and looking at you, and a silhouette of someone, and like these scenes will kind of play out in front of you, and just the way it's done is just insane. And I love how they did it. Like they knew what they were doing. They knew how they wanted it to look, how it wanted to be presented, and I'm speechless at how they do it. It's great. The last bit that I'll say about this game, that what makes it my game of the year, is Resident Evil 4 remake was my game of the year before I played Alan Wake 2, but Alan Wake 2, which is this new experience, so it's kind of like I almost does have the effect of the new hotness, you know, where it's like the new thing is what's making me I don't want to give my game of the year to Resident Evil 4, which is this game I've already played. It's a remake, you know, still great, but Alan Wake 2 feels like this new experience, this new influential thing that's people are gonna remember for years, and it's just this new boundary pushing experimental piece of art that is just, it feels like it's really pushing things forward. Not that Resident Evil 4 didn't, because Resident Evil 4 at the time of its release, absolutely, it changed the landscape of gaming for decades after it came out, or the almost 2 decades since it came out. But Alan Wake 2 does this thing where it's very survival horror. It's a little bit different than the first one, whereas the first one is just enemy encounter after enemy encounter. It's a lot more action oriented, a lot more like slow motion shooting and all that stuff, where Alan Wake 2 is more methodical and there's a lot of jump scares in it, actually quite a few jump scares. It's more psychological, it screws with you, there's a lot more tenseness, and the combat encounters are a little more minimal this time, but when they come, they're that much more effective. So in a way, Alan Wake 2 and Resident Evil 4 do feel very similar, with their kind of isolated, eerie setting, and like these, you know, damp forests, and there's cults, and there's weird shit going on, and you got guns, and you got to kill these weird freaks, and there's a lot of weird shit going on in both games. But you know, Resident Evil 4 has kind of the campy monster overtones with like weird creatures and there's one-liners, and there's a bit more comedy, and there's a bit more over the top, like a sci-fi kind of nature to it, whereas Alan Wake 2 feels very gritty, surreal, nightmare kind of dreamlike concepts and settings, but also feels kind of like it does take place still modern day in like the real world. But of course there's these very fantastical, eerie, creepy things going on in the game that make it that much more crazy and supernatural. There is of course some comedy in here too, not unlike Resident Evil 4, but Alan Wake 2 feels very focused on delivering a certain tone that you can tell that they just really worked hard on and really were committed to delivering in exactly the way that they wanted to. And I'm not downplaying Resident Evil 4 at all when I say this things, because I still love Resident Evil 4 Remake a lot. But Alan Wake 2 has inched its way into my game of the year. It reminds me of games like Inscription and Killer 7, two of my other favorite games, where They're just these like very straightforward gameplay games with like, you know, Killer 7 is like exploration and shooting and puzzle solving, not unlike Alan Wake 2. Whereas Inscription is like this card-based mechanics, like puzzle features, mystery features, but it's mainly just a card game. But they feature these really crazy meta narrative experimental techniques in their storytelling and presentation, music, everything, that they elevate their games that much more. And that's what Alan Wake 2 did for me. It turned from this, it's not just this basic survival horror puzzle game. There's so much more to this game in its presentation and how it's like, just thinking about the plot afterwards, and who is this person and what was their part in it, what did they do here, and why you could just sit down and you could map out the whole game on the wall, similar to how Saga does with her All of Her Evidence, and you can link things together. And you know, it's one of those games, there's people on Reddit talking about it, and there's discussions, and there's theories, and there's all this stuff. So there's just, you know, Remedy, the developers Remedy just knew that what they were going for here. They committed to it. They wanted players to experience this storyline how they wanted, but also be able to talk about it at length. And they achieved that in maybe the most perfect way I've seen in a long time. So this is me very much telling you to play Alan Wake 2. Get the platinum for it. And if you've enjoyed my other videos, I just wanted to explain why this is my game of the year, because I played a lot of really great games this year, as I've explained. I'll link some of those videos below if you want to check out my discussions on those other games. Yeah, I got a lot of great platinums this year, played a lot of great games this year. There's still others I haven't played, and I'm going to check them out. I definitely want to play Super Mario Bros. Wonder. That looks great. And yeah, thank you for watching this video. You can leave a like if you liked it, and I'll see you on the next one.